Hello everyone, today I'm going to tell you some stories about cheating. The first story. The Ferris wheel loomed, a skeletal giant against the cotton candy sky. Its slow, predictable rotation was a cruel counterpoint to the frantic churn in Clara's stomach. She clutched her melting strawberry ice cream, the sickly sweet aroma doing little to settle the queasiness rising in her throat. This was supposed to be their day. A day of laughter, thrilling rides, and shared cotton candy dreams marking their 10th anniversary. But somewhere between the tilt-a-whirl and the haunted house, the dream had curdled. She'd seen them, hadn't she? Just a glimpse, a fleeting impression swallowed whole by the roaring crowds and flashing lights. He was holding her hand, a girl who couldn't be older than a college student, her vibrant red hair a stark contrast to Clara's muted brown. He was looking at her the way he used to look at Clara, with an adoration that had long since faded from their shared life. Disbelief had momentarily paralyzed her. She'd told herself it was a mirage, a trick of the light, the exhaustion finally taking its toll. But the image had burned itself onto the back of her eyelids, replaying with agonizing clarity. The curve of his smile, the gentle squeeze of her hand, the way he leaned in to whisper something that made her burst into laughter. All directed at someone who wasn't her. He was now beside her, oblivious, pointing at the swirling teacups with forced enthusiasm. "Want to go on that, honey?" he asked, his voice a little too loud, a little too bright. Clara managed a weak smile. "I think I'll just sit this one out, Tom." Feeling a little off. He didn't push. He just squeezed her hand briefly, a perfunctory gesture devoid of the warmth she craved. "All right," he said, his eyes already scanning the crowd as if searching for, what? An escape? Another distraction? She watched him walk away, his back a familiar yet foreign landscape. 10 years. 10 years of shared memories, of building a life, of weathering storms, all seemingly rendered meaningless by a momentary lapse in judgment, a stolen glance, a whispered secret. Clara found a bench overlooking the park, the kaleidoscope of colors blurring through the tears that she finally allowed to spill. The sounds of laughter and screams felt like a mocking chorus. She imagined him on that teacup ride, his laughter mingling with the girls, the world spinning dizzyingly around them. The Ferris wheel stopped, suspending a row of passengers high in the air. She watched them, suspended in their own little world, unaware of the world churning below. She wondered if he was up there, suspended in his illusion, believing he could have it all. Finally, she pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over his contact, then hesitated. What was she going to say? "Happy anniversary, by the way. I think I saw you with your girlfriend?" No. The confrontation would have to wait. She needed to gather herself, to breathe, to figure out how to untangle this mess that had just shattered her life. Instead, she scrolled through her contacts and found her sister, Emily. "Hey," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you have time for a talk?" The Ferris wheel began to turn again. As one of the carriages began its descent, Clara felt a new emotion stir within her, a nascent spark of defiance. It wouldn't be easy. The pain would be excruciating. But she wouldn't let this day, this betrayal, define her. She would descend from this emotional freefall, bruised but not broken. The amusement park might have lost its luster, but life, she decided, was far from over. And maybe, just maybe, she deserved a thrilling ride of her own. The second story. The cafe was a symphony of hushed whispers and clinking porcelain, a familiar refuge against the relentless hum of the city. Eleanor loved the way the aroma of roasted coffee beans clung to the air, a comforting blanket in a world that often felt threadbare. Today, however, the comforting familiarity offered no solace. Her hands, usually steady as she sketched in her notebook, trembled as she stirred her already overly sugared latte. She was waiting for David. David, her husband's best friend. David, with the kind eyes and the ready smile that always seemed to reach her first. David, the man she shouldn't have been seeing. The affair had been a slow, insidious creep. A shared laugh here, a lingering glance there, a connection forged over mutual frustrations and shared dreams. It started innocently enough, late-night phone calls when Michael, her husband, was working late, conversations about art and literature that felt like a breath of fresh air compared to the mundane discussions about mortgages and grocery lists. Then came the casual coffees, the walks in the park, the stolen moments of genuine understanding, and then the inevitable. A kiss charged with unspoken desire and suppressed longing, followed by a torrential downpour of guilt and shame. Eleanor knew it was wrong. She knew she was betraying Michael, a kind, hard-working man who loved her unconditionally. But the pull was undeniable. David saw her, truly saw her, in a way Michael hadn't for a long time. Or perhaps she hadn't allowed him to. David arrived, his face mirroring her own anxiety. He was dressed casually in a worn leather jacket and a faded blue t-shirt, a stark contrast to the sharp suits he usually wore for work. He sat down heavily, avoiding her gaze. "Eleanor," he started, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to say." "We need to stop," she blurted out, the words tumbling out like a dam breaking. "This can't continue. It's hurting Michael, it's hurting us." David finally looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and understanding. "I know. I've been thinking the same thing. We've made a mistake." The weight of his words settled on her chest, heavy and suffocating. She had expected relief, a sense of freedom, but instead she felt an overwhelming sense of loss. Loss of the passion, the connection, the feeling of being truly seen. They sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the gentle hum of the coffee machine and the muffled conversations around them. Finally, David spoke, his voice laced with regret. "I'm going to tell Michael," he said. Eleanor's breath hitched. Her world tilted on its axis. "No. You can't. He'll be devastated. He deserves to know, Eleanor. He deserves the truth." She wanted to argue, to plead, to desperately cling to the fragile facade they had built. But deep down, she knew he was right. Michael deserved the truth, no matter how painful. The walk home was a blur. The city lights seemed to mock her, reflecting her guilt and shame in their cold, unforgiving glare. As she unlocked the door to their apartment, the familiar scent of Michael's cologne filled her nostrils, a reminder of the love she had betrayed. Michael was in the living room, reading a book. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. "Hey honey, how was your day?" The question was a knife twisting in her gut. How was her day? She had spent it betraying him, lying to him, and planning the dismantling of their marriage. She couldn't answer. She just stood there, paralyzed by fear and regret, the weight of her actions crushing her. The cafe, once a sanctuary, was now a monument to her betrayal. The aroma of coffee, once comforting, was now a constant reminder of the lies she had told, the trust she had broken, and the love she had shattered. She knew with a chilling certainty that her life would never be the same again. The silence was broken only by the soft crackle of the fire, a testament to the warmth she had so carelessly tossed away. The truth, she knew, was coming, and she was terrified. The third story. The chipped porcelain mug warmed Amelia's hands, but did little to thaw the chill that had settled deep in her bones. Outside, the spring rain was a relentless, mournful drumbeat against the kitchen window, mirroring the storm raging inside her. Liam was late, again. He'd promised to be home for dinner, a rare occasion lately, but Amelia wasn't surprised. Surprises were a luxury she could no longer afford. She'd spent the afternoon perfecting her mother's chicken pot pie recipe, a dish Liam adored, a dish that symbolized comfort and family, things that felt increasingly foreign in her own home. The savory aroma was now tinged with a bitter undercurrent, the scent of betrayal. Because Amelia knew, she'd found a discarded lipstick, a shade of vibrant coral she never wore, nestled between the front seats of Liam's car, a shade identical to the one her sister, Bethany, favored. Then there were the hushed phone calls, the whispered excuses, the fleeting glances that lingered a fraction too long between Liam and Bethany during the rare family gatherings. At first, she dismissed it as paranoia, the product of a tired, overworked mind. But the feeling, a dull ache in the pit of her stomach, had grown until it was an unbearable weight. Bethany, her bright, bubbly, blonde sister, the one who always managed to effortlessly captivate everyone in the room, the one who always seemed to get what Amelia wanted simply by existing. Now, seemingly, she had Liam too. The key turned in the lock, and Amelia braced herself. Liam walked in, his face etched with a practiced weariness that she knew was a carefully constructed facade. "Hey, honey, traffic was a nightmare," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too cheerful. He pecked her on the cheek, a perfunctory gesture that felt like a brand. "Dinner's ready?" Amelia managed, her voice betraying none of the turmoil within. Liam's eyes flickered to the pot pie on the counter. "Smells amazing, love." I ate earlier. Meeting ran late. Pizzas were ordered. The casual dismissal was a punch to the gut. Amelia felt a tear prick her eye, but she swallowed it down. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Right," she said, her voice tight. "Well, I'll just put it away then." The following days were a torturous dance of lies and unspoken accusations. Amelia watched them, Liam and Bethany, their subtle glances and forced smiles, the way Bethany's hand lingered a little too long on Liam's arm. It was a slow, agonizing unraveling of everything she thought was real. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She waited until Liam was out, ostensibly at a late meeting, and then she called Bethany. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice trembling as Bethany's initial bright tone quickly turned guarded. "About what, Amelia?" "About Liam." The silence that followed was deafening. They met at a neutral location, a stark, modern cafe. Bethany arrived first, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her eyes wide and innocent. Amelia, in her plain jeans and worn sweater, felt all her insecurities bubbling to the surface. "I know," Amelia said, cutting straight to the point. Bethany's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes. "Amelia, I don't," Amelia interrupted, her voice surprisingly firm. "Don't insult me with your excuses. I know what's been going on." The confession, when it came, was a messy, tearful torrent of justifications. Bethany claimed it had started innocently, a few shared laughs, a shoulder to lean on when Liam was stressed. Then, somehow, it had spiraled out of control. She claimed she loved Liam, that he made her feel seen, understood. Amelia listened, her heart hardening with each word. Love? Was that what they called it? Betrayal cloaked in selfishness. "He's my husband, Bethany," Amelia said, her voice flat. "My husband. How could you?" Bethany's sobs intensified. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Amelia. I swear." The words rang hollow. Amelia stood up, her chair scraping against the tile floor. "You didn't just hurt me, Bethany," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You broke us. Both of us." She walked away, leaving Bethany to her tears and her justifications. The rain had stopped, and a weak ray of sunlight peeked through the clouds. Amelia no longer felt the chill. Instead, a cold, burning anger coursed through her veins. She knew what she had to do. She went home and waited for Liam. When he arrived, his face pale and drawn, she simply handed him the divorce papers. "I know," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Get out." He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just looked at her, a flicker of something that might have been regret in his eyes, and then he left. The rain started again, harder this time. Amelia stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street. The pot pie sat untouched on the counter, a symbol of a life that was now shattered. That it was over. Her marriage, her trust, her faith in her sister. Everything was gone. But as the storm raged outside, a small seed of something new began to sprout within her. It was a seed of resilience, of strength, of the understanding that she, Amelia, could survive this. She would rebuild her life brick by agonizing brick. And she would do it alone. The fourth story. The crisp, starched sheets felt alien against Amelia's skin. She usually preferred her own worn cotton imprinted with the comforting scent of lavender and home. But tonight, she was in a sterile hotel room miles from that home, waiting. Her husband, David, was attending a conference. He'd called earlier, his voice a little too bright, a little too rushed to suggest she join him for the final night. A romantic getaway, he'd called it. Amelia, her suspicions already simmering, had agreed. The suspicion had started weeks ago, a slow drip of anxieties. The extra hours David was working, the hushed phone calls, the faint, unfamiliar perfume clinging to his clothes. He blamed it on a new client, a deadline, a spilled sample. But Amelia had a gut feeling, a cold certainty that gnawed at her insides. She heard his key card swipe, the familiar click of the lock, and sat up, forcing a smile. David walked in, his face flushed, his eyes avoiding hers. He was carrying a small, wilting bouquet of gas station flowers. "Surprise," he announced, the words sounding hollow. "They're lovely," Amelia said, taking them with a forced grace. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. He busied himself hanging up his jacket, avoiding her gaze. "How was the conference?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. He launched into a rehearsed recital of keynote speakers and networking opportunities, none of which seemed to spark any real enthusiasm. Amelia listened, dissecting his words, searching for the telltale sign, the flicker of guilt. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "David," she said, her voice firm, "tell me the truth." He froze, his back still to her. "Truth about what?" "About everything." He turned, his face etched with fear. I don't know what you're talking about." Amelia stood up, the starched sheets rustling around her. "Don't lie to me, David. Please." The denial crumbled. He sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. I messed up," he whispered. The words were like a punch to the gut. Amelia felt the world tilt, the sterile hotel room blurring at the edges. She knew it, but hearing it aloud was a different kind of pain. "Who?" she asked, the word barely audible. He hesitated, then looked up, his eyes filled with shame. It was a maid here at the hotel." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. A maid. Not a sophisticated colleague, not a glamorous stranger. A woman who cleaned his room. The ordinariness of it, the sheer lack of imagination, somehow made it worse. Amelia stared at him, trying to reconcile the man she loved with the man sitting before her, confessing to such a tawdry affair. "How? Why?" he stammered, offering flimsy excuses about loneliness, the pressure of the conference, the woman being friendly. None of it mattered. The reasons were irrelevant. The damage was done. The next few hours were a blur of tears, accusations, and broken promises. Amelia packed her bag, her hands shaking so badly she could barely zip it. David pleaded with her, begging for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. But Amelia knew, with a chilling certainty, that their marriage was irrevocably broken. The trust, the foundation upon which their life together was built, had crumbled. As she walked out of the hotel room, leaving David standing alone amidst the sterile, starched sheets, Amelia felt a strange sense of liberation. The pain was immense, but beneath it lay a flicker of hope. A hope for a future where she valued herself enough to demand honesty and respect, a future where she wouldn't settle for empty promises and wilting gas station flowers. The hotel room, once a symbol of suspicion and betrayal, now represented a new beginning. A painful, uncertain beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. The maid, unknowingly, had swept away the illusion of their perfect life, leaving Amelia to face the harsh reality. And in that reality, she found the strength to walk away. The fifth story. The sterile scent of antiseptic had always been a comfort to Amelia. As a doctor, it was the smell of healing, of competence, of controlled chaos. But lately, it was tainted. It reeked of lies, of betrayal, of a future fracturing before her very eyes. The first hint, the insidious prickling of unease, had come subtly. Liam, her husband, a man as steady and dependable as an ancient oak, had started staying late at the office. He was a lawyer, always busy, but this was different. He was vague about his cases, his usual enthusiastic recounts replaced with clipped, tired responses. Then came the phone. Liam's phone, constantly buzzing, often hidden face down on the table. Amelia, usually unbothered by such things, found herself increasingly drawn to it, a moth to a flickering, dangerous flame. She dismissed it as stress, the pressure cooker of their demanding lives. Until the night she saw the name, Gina, Med Center, pop up, followed by a string of heart emojis. Gina. That was when the meticulously constructed dam of denial in Amelia's mind began to crack. She knew Gina. Gina was a nurse assigned to Liam's father during his recent, mercifully brief, hospital stay. Amelia had met her, a bright, cheerful woman with a genuine smile and a calming presence. She'd even complimented Liam on how attentive Gina had been to his father. Now, the memory felt like a knife twisting in her gut. The confrontation had been agonizing. Liam, initially defensive, finally crumbled, his face contorted with shame. He confessed the details, a brutal, clinical dissection of their marriage. He'd been stressed, overwhelmed by the weight of his father's illness, the pressures of his job, the boredom of their routine. He claimed it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment. He swore he'd ended it. Amelia, numb with disbelief, hadn't screamed or raged. Instead, she'd asked him to leave. Now, weeks later, he was back, standing hesitantly in the doorway of their once-shared home, a forlorn figure against the backdrop of a setting sun. He clutched a bouquet of lilies, her favorite, their delicate fragrance a stark contrast to the bitterness that still lingered in the air. "Amelia," he began, his voice raw with desperation. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you more than I can ever say. But I love you. I truly do. Please, give me a second chance." Amelia looked at him, her gaze unflinching. She saw the genuine remorse etched on his face, the weariness in his eyes. She also saw the ghost of the man she had thought she knew, the man she had built a life with. "It's not that simple, Liam," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "You didn't just make a mistake. You shattered something. Something fundamental." She gestured to the living room, to the pictures on the wall, to the comfortable, familiar space that felt suddenly alien. This was built on trust, on mutual respect. You broke that. And I don't know if I can ever put it back together again. Liam stepped closer, his hand reaching out, then hesitating, retracting as if burned. "I'll do anything. Anything to earn your trust back. I'll go to therapy, I'll quit my job, I'll do whatever it takes." Amelia sighed. She knew he meant it, at least in this moment. But could she trust that this remorse would last? Could she risk opening herself up to that kind of pain again? She considered the alternative. A life alone, perhaps. A life free from the shadow of betrayal, but also devoid of the comfortable warmth of shared history, shared dreams. "Give me time," she finally said, the words barely a whisper. "I need time to think. Time to decide if I can even begin to forgive you. Time to decide if what we had is worth fighting for." Liam nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping slightly. "Okay," he said, his voice resigned. "I understand. I'll give you all the time you need." He placed the lilies on the small table near the door, their pristine white petals a silent plea for forgiveness. As he turned to leave, Amelia watched him, her heart a battlefield of conflicting emotions. The antiseptic smell of her workplace still clung to her clothes, a constant reminder of the harsh realities of life, of the fallibility of human nature. But now, mixed with the delicate scent of the lilies, there was a faint, almost imperceptible hint of something else. Hope. A fragile, tentative hope, a seed planted in the barren soil of betrayal, waiting to see if it could ever truly bloom again. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time in weeks, Amelia felt a flicker of resolve. Perhaps, just perhaps, healing was possible. The question was, could she bring herself to walk that path, even if it led to the same broken heart? The sixth story. The Tuscan sun beat down on Amelia's back, warm and heavy like a comforting hand. She leaned against the weathered stone wall of their rental villa, the scent of rosemary and sun-baked earth filling her lungs. Italy. It was supposed to be a rebirth, a rekindling of the flame that had flickered precariously low in her marriage to David. 5 years, a mortgage, and a creeping sense of indifference had turned their once passionate romance into something beige. David was inside, meticulously arranging cheese and salami on a platter. He'd become strangely domestic since they arrived, cooking elaborate meals, insisting on handpicking the perfect tomatoes at the local market. Amelia found it unsettling, like he was trying too hard to be the man she'd fallen in love with, the man she wasn't sure existed anymore. The Vespa's whine broke the afternoon stillness. "That must be our pizza," David called. His voice a little too enthusiastic. Amelia watched as a young man, all tangled curls and dazzling smile, unfolded himself from the scooter. He approached the gate, his movements fluid and graceful, the pizza box held aloft like an offering. His name tag read Marco. Marco spoke rapid-fire Italian, gesturing with his hands. David surprisingly understood. He laughed, a genuine, booming laugh that Amelia hadn't heard in years. He paid Marco, lingering over the transaction. Amelia frowned, felt too long. Then, David did something unexpected. He invited Marco inside. Come in, have a slice with us. We're celebrating our anniversary." Amelia, still leaning against the wall, was taken aback. David, the introverted accountant, inviting a pizza delivery guy into their villa? This was definitely new. The afternoon unfolded with an unsettling charm. Marco, despite the language barrier, was captivating. He told stories of his family's olive grove, showed them pictures of his grandmother, and somehow, between slices of pizza, managed to make them both laugh until their sides ached as the sun began to dip below the horizon. Painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marco excused himself. "Grazie mille," he said, flashing them another blinding smile. "Buona sera." David walked him to the gate, his hand lingering for a moment on Marco's arm. Amelia saw it all, the slight hesitation, the shared glance, a connection that buzzed with unspoken energy. After Marco left, David was strangely flushed. He cleared the table with a meticulousness bordering on obsessive. Amelia watched him, her heart a cold, heavy stone in her chest. "He was charming," she said, her voice carefully neutral. David didn't meet her eyes. "Yes, charming." The next few days were a blur of awkward silences and forced smiles. David's newfound domesticity intensified. He organized outings to vineyards, read aloud from travel guides, and constantly asked Amelia if she was enjoying herself. One evening, Amelia decided she couldn't take it anymore. She found David on the terrace, staring at the distant hills. "David," she began, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" He flinched. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean. You've been acting different. And I saw you. With Marco." He finally looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, relief. "Amelia," he whispered, "it just happened. I didn't plan it." The truth, when it came, was both agonizing and absurd. David confessed to a brief, passionate encounter with Marco after that first pizza delivery. He described the loneliness he felt, the void that had grown between them, and how Marco had offered a fleeting moment of connection, a spark of life in the beige landscape of their marriage. Amelia listened, numb. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd come to Italy to save their marriage, and instead, it had been destroyed by a pizza delivery guy. "So what now?" she asked, her voice hollow. David reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I don't know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The truth hung in the air, as heavy and suffocating as the Tuscan heat. Their dreams of a rekindled romance crumbled, replaced by the bitter reality of betrayal and the realization that sometimes the most unexpected things can shatter even the strongest foundations. The sun set, casting long shadows across the terrace. Amelia looked out at the rolling hills, the vineyards, the ancient olive groves. Italy, the land of romance, had instead delivered a harsh, unforgettable lesson. And Amelia knew with a chilling certainty that their marriage, like a badly burnt pizza, was beyond saving. It was time to order a new one, alone.